Coming up, Hatul versus Trunks.
Welcome everybody to Group C's second initial match. Who's going to join Blood Trail in the winners and ultimately book a spot today for the top 8 quarterfinals on the last remaining day of the Fall Championships? My name's Frodan. I'm joined by Brian Kibler, and we got a really nice best of 5 coming.
We do. This is the match that I've been looking forward to the most all day, not just because we're casting it, but because I think it's going to be a really interesting dynamic with some really unusual decks.
I'll tell you all about it, but for now, let's go ahead and meet our players. The first from China, making his 3rd championship appearance from China. Please welcome Trunks.
Once the novice player among a field of veterans, now he is the veteran hoping to take a spot for China, the World Championship.
And his opponent, the first challenger to make it to this global stage. Please welcome from Israel, it's Hatul.
Hatul is quite the character, as I'm sure you'll find, and his decks, they got character of their own. We'll see how they do in the match.
Hatul 的卡组是非常非常奇怪的。
I don't think anyone got a big edge over this tournament, not against me.
在第一眼看到的时候，我觉得他的卡组可能打我是不太好打的。
They have to worry that I might beat them.
但是我自己练下来以后，发现应该我还是比较劣势的。我的风格是那种我偏爱好控制卡组，但是我这次带了一个快攻的 line up， 可以算是一个改变吧，在这种大赛上。
So if I was playing my playoffs lineup, I was cool, free win, let's beat him. But given I changed the decks to adapt to the other 2 in my group, so my decks are better fitting to face the greedy lineup.
可能就是我打牌风格会偏慢一点吧，就每一回合我思考的时间特别长，会就是通俗点说，我可能会烧神，然后尽量就避免我自己。
If I manage to just pull off some wild growth stuff and get it out of the way, is as good as done. You know, whatever happens, I might just go to 0, I might just beat Trunks and lose to the other 2. Surprise is awaiting.
All right, well, now that you got to know our players a little bit better, I will say one thing. Hatul may have the most odd lineup out of any of the players here, pun intended. But he's also one of the well-dressed players here. I think you look at him, he actually wants to just have fun. He said, you know what, I don't really have casual clothes in my closet. I want to look good, and I can respect that.
Wardrobe 5 out of 5. I can appreciate that particular stat. I think we both can. And yeah, you know, we even saw the Hearthstone pin on his jacket there. I can really appreciate that too.
Right, and the facts that you see at the glance box is that Hatul is also a big tournament organizer. He says that he organized like local groups on Facebook and WhatsApp to connect players because he always felt like that was the most important thing about local card games. He's been playing card games for a long part of his life, and he really wanted to have that grassroots scene. So much respect for him to organize first, which is why people may have not heard of it that much. Now, on the other hand, you have Trunks, and he's making his 3rd appearance, which is a record for China, along with Omega Zero.
I think the 3rd is a record overall.
Is it the overall?
3 championship appearances since we switched to the global championships. I believe no other player has made their way to 3 championships.
Okay, cool. Well, congratulations, Trunks. He is also apparently really big into karaoke. It's like a
Now, I can appreciate that too.
See, now that's an actual fun fact, TJ, except it wasn't provided by us. So it's production's fun fact number whatever. So take a look at the lineups, getting a little bit more serious here. The Odd Warrior is banned, and Odd Warrior is an appropriate title because there are some very weird choices like Vicious Fledgling and Frothing Berserker, but that's banned.
I am disappointed that we won't see Hatul's Odd Warrior deck because it includes not just control warrior style cards, but it has a Vicious Fledgling. It has Darius Crowley, 2 cubes, 2 Festeroot Hulks. So his theory, at least with the deck, is that, well, I have the tank up button, I have Reckless Flurry, I have Brawl, I have Dynomatic. I have all these ways that I can beat aggressive decks anyway. I might as well make the rest of my deck give me a better chance to beat controlling decks, but Trunks decided with his aggressive lineup, he didn't want to go up against Warrior, so we will not be seeing it. The rest of Hatul's lineup, though, is still pretty unusual. This is Spell Hunter. This is not Subject 9 Hunter, which we've seen a number of times throughout the playoffs, as well as in Bloody Face's lineup this tournament. So there is going to be some To My Side and Rokdalar action available to Hatul in this particular game.
Love it. Spell Hunter is really powerful against aggressive decks because of just how many spells and removal tools that he has. And you kind of amplify that by Hatul favoring those removal, like double Wing Blast and having all these different spells and traps to handle aggressive decks. But Trunks does have things like the Prince Kelliset to start things off, which might put things slightly outside the range. Those 3/3s can't get hit by Flanking Strike. The 2 health minions won't die to Explosive Trap. So I wonder if it won't really matter nearly as much, and Hatul may instead have to rely on Deathstalker Rexar.
Looks like there's actually a full keep there from Trunks. He has the Flame Imp and the Kelliset. I'm a little bit more surprised to see the keep of Fungalmancer and Infusion at this point. But he does have, powerful curve to start things off. He's actually going to start off with the Soul Infusion Coin Imp. Okay.
I like it.
This I can see. The Fungalmancer keep when you're coining here is a little bit more suspect to me. But that Flame Imp is a lot of pressure right away. And Hatul, he has Wandering Monster, which can at least slow that down and maybe even kill if he gets something big.
Right, and Hatul will take some damage, but it's all about can he stabilize in time. And also, I mean, this Wandering Monster has a lot of potential for disaster for Trunks if a poisonous minion comes out on the other side.
Yeah, or a King Mukla, like we saw yesterday.
Yeah, King Mukla, I mean, Injured Blade Master is probably the worst case scenario.
There's also just the fear, is this Freezing Trap? If it's not Wandering Monster, it could be Freezing Trap, and that could punish this particular play as well. So I mean, I think if Trunks makes this play, you have to attack, because you have to assume there's something there. It is
Oh!
Oh dear! I shouldn't have said anything.
Just look at you. Did you see Hatul look over and smirk at Trunks? That is a 2-for-1.
That's 2 games so far this weekend that King Mukla has made an appearance, and a very important one as well.
I was gonna say, for a guy that was having a lot of fun with his banana in the intro, he didn't have a King Mukla in his lineup compared to some of the other players.
Everyone else got a weapon, and he decided his weapon was the banana, and Mukla appreciated that and decided to come hang out as well.
Well, Hatul also was emoting Trunks to kind of egg him on to attack, and then Trunks like, okay, I'm gonna attack, and then the King Mukla shows up, and that is annoying to say the least. Trunks picks up a pretty nice turn 3 play with the buff Tar Creeper, just wants to focus on having his board as secure as possible for that Fungalmancer. But the closer we get to Hatul being able to get Deathstalker Rexar online and be in a safe spot, he's gonna be able to generate threats himself and then turn the tides.
Yeah, he does have a Flanking Strike that he could use to answer the Kelliset here, or to chip off half the life of the Tar Creeper so it can be finished off by the 3/3. It's all a little bit awkward here. Yeah, it looks like he's going to go ahead and Hunter's Mark as well, or rather instead, you could use either the Explosive Trap or just Wing Blast down the Kelliset if he wants, but he's going to go ahead and fire off the Hero Power. This does leave Trunks with the Serenite Chain Gang with the Kelliset buff that he can drop here, which sets him up with a powerful board. But now, though, Hatul has Flanking Strike into Wing Blast next turn, so he will be able to remove both of these the following turn.
Yeah, and this is the name of the game for Spell Hunter. It has all the early game tools to try and control the state of the board until it starts picking up either spells to generate minions, like Companion and To My Side, or as we mentioned, the Death Knight.
Flanking Strike plus Wing Blast will kill both of those Serenite Chain Gangs if Hatul wants to go for that. He does decide to drop Explosive Trap.
Ooh. Okay. This is kind of a pretty big punish. Hatul is really hoping that Trunks does not have a way to buff, and with the attack onto a Serenite Chain Gang, this all but telegraphs the Explosive Trap.
And this is interesting because Trunks does have the ability to play around this by playing the Fungalmancer, but the Rexar in Hatul's hand actually prevents that, quote unquote punish from really happening, because he can play the Fungal Mancer, buff the two health minions, attack. That does 2 damage to everything, which would leave a bunch of 2 health minions and a 3 health minion. There's still a Candle Shot in Rexar, so he can get a full board clear with the Rexar next turn.
Right. And then there's the option for Trunks, if you can read into 1 level deeper, Kibler. Level 3 is to buff and not attack.
Yeah, and that is an option. Then he has another Fungal Mancer potentially available the next turn.
Right. So you can choose to buff the minions. No matter what you play, you're going to lose something to Rexar. And if you don't want to lose your taunt minions, then Fungal Mancer and then not attack. And then Fungal Mancer again with Voodoo Doll to heal up whatever got damaged by the Rexar. You can make up the difference there the following turn. But it is, if it is Explosive Trap and nothing else, you feel like you miss a lot of damage.
All right, well, he does take it slow, does want to prevent that Explosive Trap plus Rexar potential clear. There is Rexar. And
it's a great play here from Trunks.
Yeah, this will let Hatul clear off the smaller chain gang. Oh, he chooses not to.
Right. Once again, just no.
I suppose there's no reason
both
to.
players
Yeah,
know that
Fungal
it's
Mancer anyway.
explosive.
Right.
Yeah. Might as well be a
But
face-up secret.
there's a Voodoo Doctor.
Yes.
So that the healing available to Trunks does mean that he can take advantage of this and potentially keep that minion on board if he wants. But there, again, the Candle Shot does remain in play and would kill it after the fact. So he may want to use that Voodoo Doctor to heal up one of his remaining minions after he triggers Explosive Trap.
Right. It's definitely a problem too, because there's more to back up Hatul's defenses. He's got Unleash the Hounds, Wing Blast.
And crucially, because the Wandering Monster was able to kill that Flame Imp early on with the King Mukla, he is at a healthy 31 life overall.
Right.
So Trunks has a long road to go to actually finish this game, and that's a lot of time Hatul will have to craft zombies with Rexar.
I mean, it is 12 coming, so it's still a lot of pressure with 3 more on the following turn. So Trunks does have like the soft lethal set up if Hatul can't answer it. Another Explosive Trap comes in the hand, but I imagine Hatul wants to start turning the tides with the board state and develop himself here. And with that Unleash the Hound's Wing Blast combination,
Clears off the board.
It's just a complete clear. And this is why it's such a tough matchup for the Zoo Warlock against Spell Hunter, and why Hatul was really looking to target decks like this.
I mean, Trunks does have the Dreadlord, and he gets another 1-drop. Ooh, Leroy is one of the worst draws for Trunks here, because he'd love to have that available to him to draw to finish off the game later, but now if he fires off that Soulfire, there's a chance he just loses Leroy for that burst kill, and he really needs to get rid of that Misha in order to actually get anything done.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about the alternative lines, because very clearly from our side, it looks like he wants to develop and maybe Soulfire the 4/4. But I'm wondering if he can instead perhaps develop and then pass. What's the most threatening thing Misha could do to you? Probably just enable things like Kill Command, or if your opponent builds a beast and then gets beast synergy from it. Feels like that'd be the punish.
I mean, frankly, Trunks is at 19. He's actually under a bit of pressure here, and leaving that on the board is at least somewhat scary.
It's true.
He could just life tap and play the Dreadlord, and that may be his option. If he drew, say, a 1-drop there, though, he just has such an efficient turn of Dreadlord 1-drop Soulfire, and doesn't risk just losing his Leroy Burst for later.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I like this a little bit more because Hatul has switched to Deathstalker Rexar, which means his burst is still scary with a kill command, but it's less scary over the War of Attrition when your opponent just keeps hero powering you over turns.
There's a Spellstone, and he has Explosive Trap. He could play Explosive Trap into Spellstone.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
And this it puts the clock on Trunks. Now there's 9 power worth of Wolves and the Misha on the board. Those Librarians are getting more and more costly. He can Leroy now and at least have the Dreadlord kill the minions that come off of it.
Yep. So, I'm trying to count up Trunks if there's any like tap for a Soulfire in case he had like a lethal opportunity. It looks like he'll still be off by a few damage points. Voodoo Doll is able to reset the damage done by that Kobold Librarian.
He does know that this trap is either wandering or explosive, which is an awkward position for his board, period, in order to actually try and end this game. And now he's at 9. There's lethal against him on the board.
Looks like he wants to Soulfire at least one of these wolves.
Well, the Fungal Enchanter plus Voodoo Doctor means that he could keep himself at least out of range of dying by playing those two.
I mean, your opponent has so many Build the Beast opportunities for lethal. They can have Direwolf out. They can have a single charge.
Yeah.
They could have, not to mention, of course, the normal ways to die, like Kill Command, Rock Galar, to my side.
Well, 3 damage ends the game here for Hatul.
The
Razor Maw with charge. There you go. So that zombie gets the job done. Trunks cannot win with his Zoo Warlock here, and Hatul takes a 1-game lead in the series.
Yeah, Zoo Warlock is going to be the deck that potentially struggles the most in this series. Spell Hunter was a difficult matchup, but so is Control Priest when they have a bunch of AoE. The way you can beat that is a Kelset buff and make it very awkward for Dustbreaker. And of course, his best matchup is probably that Ramp Druid. Try to bust open before they're able to put out all those big, heavy threats.
Yeah, Hatul, again, has a very unusual lineup, and specifically, it matches up quite well against the aggressive decks that Trunks is playing, so it will be an uphill road for Trunks to get back into this match.
That's right. But if he can get past the Zoo Warlock, it might be a little bit easier, because part of what dragged down his percentages so much was because there was Spell Hunter and Odd Warrior, 2 fantastic decks versus aggro. Control Priest, you expect it to be better versus aggro, but Priest still struggles a little bit at times.
Again, Hatul has an unusual version of Priest here. He has a deck with 2 copies of Free from Amber, only 1 copy of Primordial Drake. So he has a more top end that can end up clogging up your hand rather than as many anti-aggro tools as some versions have.
All right, well, that's just the first game in this best of 5. We're going to find out what happens between Trunks and Hatul when we return to the Fall Championship.
Hey, I'm Eden Zamir from Israel. I really like tournaments. It's a great opportunity to prove that you're actually good at this game, but also just fun. Sometimes we even win stuff.
Hatul makes it through to the championships.
Somehow I managed to beat papers with rock. Well, that's my main hobby. I mean, apart from Hearthstone, I also run the Hearthstone community in Israel, but that also has to do with it. There was no local scene in Israel, so I basically built the community around. It's not just the Fireside Gatherings, it's all the medias, it's everything.
Filling up his mana curve perfectly.
I like having something that I like, focus my time around that, and be good at it. That's how it works for me. Sure, I would like to win, but I don't need anyone's recognition to know I'm a good player. I don't think anyone got a big edge over this tournament, not against me, not against each other. Gonna be fun.
大家好，我是 Trunks， 我来自中国 LP 战队。
Trunks looking to improve on his spring championship performance. He'll need a win here to do it.
就尽力打好每一场预选赛吧。然后其实我认为这个对我来说不是特别成功，因为我来了3次 HCT， 但是2次 HCT 打完以后我都没有取得很好的成绩，所以我还是很遗憾的。可能是炉石传说本身自带的魅力吧。然后我也可能对卡牌游戏特别的喜欢，然后发现自己可以打得比别人好，所以坚持下来。我妻子是非常支持我做这个事情的，她也会陪着我做一些炉石的直播，甚至会跟我一起出去打比赛。我其实也比较喜欢唱歌，但是我老婆经常会嘲笑我唱得不好听。有很多支持我的朋友都 在微博上说，希望我给他带来更多的卡包。我希望自己能尽力给他们带来最多的卡包，会尽自己全力。
Welcome back, everybody. Hatul versus Trunks is currently ongoing while Hatul is able to take the first game of the series. We still have plenty of Hearthstone to play. And I do want to bring up one thing that we didn't mention, just because we tend to jump directly into the games whenever we get the players to sit down as soon as possible. The ban strategy here from Hatul, choose to ban Tempo Mage. And there are a lot of reasons to maybe talk about Tempo Mage, but it is an aggro deck that I felt like he was trying to perhaps beat. Instead, he left up a deck like Malagos Druid, which tends to be a lot better against control decks. So it's interesting that Hatul chose to ban Tempo Mage and show a lot of respect for that class.
Tempo Mage is a particularly odd ban when you consider that he does have Spell Hunter in his lineup, which is unbelievably good against the Explosive Runes deck. When your best card's Explosive Runes, I don't play any minions.
Yeah, and then there's so many cheap spells to trigger.
Yeah, it's perhaps he feels like his Priest and Druid decks are weaker there than against the other like minion-based rather than burn-based decks. In particular, his Priest deck only has one copy of Divine Hymn, so that can make that matchup much harder. Trunks, though,
my goodness.
We saw this last game.
What is this curve?
We saw this last game from Trunks. He had Flame Imp into Kaliseth, but it did not go nearly as well for him. This could be going to innervate Bright-Eyed Scout if Hatul wants. I don't expect we will see that because he would still have to get up to the 5 mana to play whatever he drew from the Scout.
Yeah, the punish for the Bright-Eyed Scout 2 is extremely brutal, which is Soulfire and develop a minion. And then you're just left picking up the pieces for the next couple turns.
Ooh, this Tar Creeper could enable a Soul Infusion Chain Gang. However, Hatul, looking at his hand, he has Spreading Plague. There's only a single copy in this deck. By the way, you may be a little bit disoriented looking at Hatul's hand. It's not like many of the Druid's hand we've seen throughout the course of this weekend. He is, in fact, playing Big Druid, not Taunt Druid, the combo Hadronox deck. He does have a copy of Hadronox in his deck, but it's not used in the same way repeatedly in typical Taunt Druid. He is just trying to ramp out his big stuff as quickly as possible.
Oh, look at this. Trunks took a second to really think about his play. Instead of autopiloting the Tar Creeper and holding Happy Ghoul for a tempo opportunity, he's just going for the maximum damage. So I guess a different kind of tempo if you think about it. And Trunks, really, I kind of like it. You want to put pressure on this Druid before they can get anything going. And Trunks was sitting down and talking about this exact thing, which is being able to have a steady playstyle.
I have a very steady playstyle. That means I might rope a little bit when I think because I want to minimize the chance for me to make mistakes. That might make my opponent a little uncomfortable.
然后尽量去避免我自己犯的错误。
Yeah, if you ask the majority of the player base on social media, I'm sure they will agree. Uncomfortable is one way to put it. Very upset is another if you rope all the time.
He finished that turn before the rope, so...
He actually hasn't roped that much so far. But granted, when you have Flame Imp, Kaliseth, not really much to think about the first couple turns in that regard.
Now, though, Trunks, I think, may have been considering Soul Infusioning that Tar Creeper or something like that, but did pick up the 1. He's able to fill out his curve here and leave himself with Soul Infusion plus Chain Gang next turn, which fills up his board with a lot of pressure. And frankly, he has a ton of pressure already. He has 11 on the board if Hatul does not do something to gain armor, a Soulfire into the game.
Right. Or perhaps even a couple heals.
Yep. All right, we'll be Innervate into Nourish, which will allow Hatul to hero power here. So Leroy is actually just lethal if he picks that up. That's a Voidwalker. Not going to do it just yet. But that actually means... no, not quite able to potentially tap into Fungal Enchanter for lethal or anything, but it will be time for the buffed up Chain Gang. I think we may see the Tar Creeper trade here, which actually makes that attack from Hatul a little bit suspect for me, because it does give Trunks the ability to easily get rid of the low impact minion prior to the Spreading Plague turn.
Yeah. It's one less minion for Trunks to have to worry about by trading into his 3-1. And the 1 damage is fairly negligible. I feel like Zoo is either just going to win by a landslide or Druid barely survives and then turns it back.
It is leaving Hatul with a minion less on the board, but it's less damage on his Chain Gang. Yeah, it does make that trade, and we will see the Spreading Click come out. This is a singleton copy in Hatul's deck, so Trunks gonna have to fight through it, but knows that there will not be another one.
Light Ward number 2, looking for something bigger.
Okay, Voodoo Doctor, not terribly exciting here. It will pump his Light Warden to 4. But now Trunks is going to have to figure out how to best remove as much of this as possible while retaining the strength of his board against removal, such as Swipe from Hatul the following turn.
So many possibilities.
Interestingly, Trunks has no way to actually kill any of his other minions, so he can only play one more minion this turn. His board has only one more spot, so he couldn't play both the second Light Warden and Voodoo Doctor in order to keep his board growing and healthier as well.
And the number one thing I think Trunks that's on his mind is, what if the Primordial Drake comes down next turn? How can I best set up a scenario where I am resilient against that? And I think that's why he's favoring perhaps developing a 3 health minion like this Light Warden, as opposed to, say, use the Voodoo Doctor for the immediate buff.
Yeah, and we see that is, in fact, why he looks to be holding these back from attacking. All right, yeah, this is an attempt to, as you mentioned, play around the possibility of the Primordial Drake. There is no Drake from Hatul, though, so it will be a swipe that is still a pretty strong punish here.
Yeah, the one of branching paths.
And this allows Hatul to actually just clear off the entire board, leaving himself with a collection of scarabs that are frankly very threatening to Trunks. Hatul is down to 6, but he has Malfurion the Pestilent in hand to gain a bunch of armor and develop more of a board. I think the window may have closed for Trunks here.
Yeah, I mean, Trunks has his own army of 3 attack minions to start coming to town, but it's just gonna get eaten up by whatever else Hatul plays. And he's just got a couple big bombs. His Sleepy Dragon, and then whatever else he draws out the Bright-Eyed Scout can also be guaranteed play because he can reduce it down to 5 mana. And, I mean, Hatul still has some of the best yet to come. He's got Ysera, he's got the Lich King, can get, Master Okark to pull out all of those things.
I mean, this is a matchup where if the Zoo deck does not get the job done early, it's rarely going to get the job done because there are so many big minions that Hatul has to put in the way of Trunks' smaller minions. Just a single Sleepy Dragon. That kills 4 minions from Trunks, even with the Keleseth buff.
Yeah, Hatul gonna take a sec to think about what he wants to do. And in fact, he doesn't have to play Sleepy Dragon. Can also play Malfurion to maybe be a little bit safer and defend his health total in case his opponent get Leroy Soulfire or the equivalent of a big burst damage to end the game. Like say he plays CB Dragon, then there's Life Drinker Soulfire. Like those are ways you can lose. So I like this safe approach.
You get spiders.
I think that's fairly clever. He's going to have a lot of taunts for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Although... Oh, we can put some... Has Soulfire been used? Oh my gosh!
This could
Please,
be...
one time. Just because it's been a long time since I've seen a Soulfire tap Soulfire. It's been years, Kibler.
Hatul, he attacked into a minion there.
Oh!
Ooh, that's a fungal man. That is not the lethal Soulfire Trunks was praying for.
I was ready. Because that's a runner-runner of 18 cards left.
Well, it's also a situation where Hatul could have made Scarabs, not attacked his face into one of those minions.
Could have avoided that.
And left himself in a position. I feel like that was an unnecessary risk that Hatul took there.
Well, I thought he was just going to develop the spiders and then just like armor up.
Right. That's another possibility.
Okay, so let me see. So Hatul, or rather Trunks, still has 1 Life Drinker and 1 Soulfire left in his deck. So if Hatul just simply armors with the Malfurion hero power, still has a chance out of here.
There's an out.
Unless Hatul cycles into, or draws rather, into armor gain. That Primordial Drake, probably the worst draw in Hatul's deck right now. And one way or another, this game is going to end next turn, it looks like.
Those are the Primordial Drakes that Trunks was so afraid of, but now Trunks needs a runner miracle here. Life Drinker into Soulfire. That is not going to do it.
You'll have to see.
He does have the Solarium in his deck.
Oh, you're right.
He has the...
Does he have enough mana to play it? He does.
He could have.
He could have
Played Cobalt Librarian,
into
hit
Solarium.
the Solarium, played the Solarium, and hit Life Drinker and Soulfire.
Right, that would have been,
That would have been
7 mana.
And he had the mana to do it.
Right?
I mean, obviously that's a
Very
very
low
unlikely sequence of events, but when you are on this kind of stage, you need to give yourself every possible chance to win. And I feel like, you know, that microcosmic chance to win was something that Trunks just dismissed. I think he may have just felt that he was too far out of that, but there was a chance.
Right, and also on Hatul's side, I mean, having that one copy of Spreading Plague and the Branching Pass to help turn the board around is exactly what the Doctor ordered, because his Promoter Drakes did eventually come, but it was just a little bit late when they weren't even needed. But that just goes to show you that Big Druid actually is quite the underrated version of Druid. I think a lot of people gravitate towards Malygos, towards Token, or even just a fusion of like Mill, like Togwaggle and Malygos. But Big Druid is definitely not a deck to be underestimated either.
It is certainly a powerful deck. I mean, to be fair, I mean, we talked about, yes, he drew the Spreading Plague, he drew the Branching Path. Those were obviously crucial in terms of allowing him to take control of that game. Trunks has had turn 2 Keleseth in both games as Zoo and
But
lost
turn 1
both.
Flame Imp too,
Yeah,
which is really
turn 1 Flame Imp, turn 2 Keleseth, and he lost both games so far.
right.
That's pretty brutal.
I feel like he also like did everything to squeeze out damage too. He played like Happy Ghoul as just vanilla 3/3. And I mean, when you're a Zoo Warlock, you can't really ask for that much more outside of the free Happy Ghoul. So, you know, Trunks is going to once again have to go to the drawing board. Does have a couple of decent options with Lightworn Happy Ghoul. If he picks up a single heal, can once again tempo. And Control Priest does tend to have a little bit of a difficult time clearing the early game boards without Dustbreaker. Wow, Trunks going really hard for a Happy Ghoul activator.
Is someone injured?
Has double Happy Ghoul even, and another Flame Imp, a Flame Imp to challenge the Northshire Cleric.
Yeah.
How does he keep doing this?
Well, there is a powered shield to protect the Northshire Cleric from that Flame Imp.
Watch him just draw Keleseth. Okay, I'm just like, man.
I mean, this is coin Fungal Enchanter into double Happy Ghoul.
Right. That's just pretty much the best possible play.
And right now, Hatul does not yet have a Duskbreaker.
We got a note from J. Billy B saying the last time China started 0-4 at a seasonal championship, that was back when the Spring Championship in 2017 in Shanghai. That was in China, where Omega Zero and Jason So and then Shao T. Oh, sorry, this is a different stat. But man, that was also a brutal showing because it was in homeland China in front of, 1,000 people, really epic production, and China just got wrecked nonstop.
We see him sit up in his seat. He drew a Scale Worm, not quite the Duskbreaker he's looking for, but still a strong card.
Right.
He has 2 copies of Scale Worm in his deck, as you see both in his hand right now. There is only that one Divine Hymn, as mentioned earlier. That is his single card for healing outside of his hero power or the Alexstrasza Anduin, as far as getting a bit of armor. So this damage that Trunks is doing is gonna stick.
Yeah, but let's kind of hop into Trunks' perspective here. His opponent has the Dustbreaker. What's the best setup? Tar Creeper will survive, but then your offense is just relegated to a single one-attack minion.
I mean, I think you have to just play the Tar Creeper. I think you A, hope he doesn't have Duskbreaker. B, hope if he does have Duskbreaker, you at least pick up something to help your Tar Creeper here. That is a Akanai Soul Priest. There is a copy of Circle of Healing in Hatul's deck as well to go with the single copy of Akanai.
Scale Worm to help stabilize on the board. I mean, Trunks just has to draw a little bit extra damage here, and the game is over.
That's Fungalmancer. Not going to do it just yet. There is the Soulfire. He has 9 on board.
Right.
4 from the Soulfire, so 2 more damage needed. Can't get it this turn unless he gets Soulfire into Soulfire.
Cobalt Librarian. Dig a little bit deeper before the tap. Voodoo Doctor is pretty much just board presence here.
Get him.
Yeah, I mean, if a single 2/1 can survive, that means Fungalmancer can get the buff in case you don't want to, in case you don't have the Soulfire lethal.
There's also only a single copy of Wild Pyromancer available to Hatul as well. So while there are lots of things Trunks needs to have in mind in terms of trying to play around, there's less of a chance that Hatul has any individual one of them.
Right. Hatul's very interesting top end to help him go over the top of control is free from Amber. So, you know, he's definitely cut a lot of his anti-aggro tools. And his rationale when we talked to him was that his decks are already good against aggro. So make it better against the lineups that are going to struggle against control.
All right, well, Trunks does respect the threat of a Circle of Healing or Divine Hymn, picking up Hatul more resources, and spreads out his threats here. There is the Divine Hymn here, as well as a second Scale Worm, but that's not going to be enough to deal with Trunks' whole board at this point.
Yeah, since there you can clear off a minion and then swap attack to -1. So that's still 7.
He can Divine Him to 15 and kill a minion and heal himself to 17. So he does have the ability to stay alive. He swapped
in his mind.
Yes. I mean, I think in reality, too, there's 10 on board, so there's not enough mana to play both the Fungal Mancer and the Soulfire next turn.
That's true. It's just a possibility of maybe having Leroy or Extra Burst with, like, Life Drinker.
Right. He could also play the Twilight Acolyte rather than healing himself to get... It's one damage difference in terms of what he plays around, but he gets a body on the board and reduces the damage permanently.
I like the Twilight Acolyte better. I think you just need board presence because it helps you fight back better against the board state. So it's 1 damage difference now, but it's also more later on because you get to trade off an extra body.
I think part of the rationale for, oh, well, there's Leroy. So I think that is, in fact, no, it's 1 off.
The
he did heal.
himself.
If he had Twilight Acolyted, he would have died to Leroy. So
right.
he is he's just on top of things. But I think the Leroy actually may represent guaranteed lethal over with the Soulfire the following turn, because the Divine Hymn is gone. There's no more healing available to Hatul. If he puts him down to 1 life, he is guaranteed lethal with the Soulfire next turn.
I'm looking for outs.
I think there's still just no outs to this either. There's any combination of plays that Trunks can make that essentially puts Hatul on 0 outs thanks to the fact that there's just the 1 Divine Hymn and it has been used. So even if this board gets cleared, you know, say he heals himself, Akanai circles, he's at 7, Leroy and Soulfire end it. So now Trunks does get on the board with this Uwalak deck and trying to make sure that China does not get swept in these opening matches.
Control Priest could be the fatal flaw here. Not necessarily for any deck list building problems. I mean, you did see the Akanai Soul Priest, for example, make an appearance, but you just look at the matchup spread as a whole. There's still Malygos Druid, which is very hard for Control Priest to beat. And then Odd Rogue does have the edge over Control Priest by early game tempo, unless you're able to stifle it. And he's missing those cards like Wild Pyromancer to help him out.
It's true. You know, this build from Hatul, if it gets the right early game cards, if he finds Duskbreaker, if he finds Akanai plus Circle, he has the tools to compete with these aggressive decks, but as we saw in that game, he has fewer of those tools than we often see in some of these decks, and he can run out.
That's right. So we'll find out if Trunks can complete the reverse sweep, but I wouldn't rule it out as a possibility. We'll find out what happens when we return to the Fall Championships here from Los Angeles, California.
The Hearthstone Fall Championship continues! Welcome back to the Hearthstone Global Games. New for the 2nd season, we're proud to introduce HGG Cheer. Cheering is a way to show support for players and regions while boosting your presence in chat using bits, a virtual good you can buy on Twitch. Along the way, you'll unlock Hearthstone packs, new Twitch emotes, and a unique card back, while the players earn a share of the revenue. We'll see you in the tavern.
In this video, I'm gonna profile Trunks, who recently earned his spot as one of the China representatives in the 2018 HCT Fall Championship. Trunks is one of the most dominant Hearthstone players in all of China. Last year, Trunks even qualified for the Summer Championship, but wasn't quite able to turn that appearance into a World Championship invite. But now, Trunks has another shot with the 2018 HCT Fall Championship. Today, we're going to take a look at one of his most recent plays that secured him a spot in the HCT Fall Championship. Let's look at the decider match between Trunks and Melody. It's turn 2 of game 2, and we've got Trunks' Oddrogue up against Melody's Togwaggle Malagos Druid. One of the most common lines of play when facing Druid with Oddrogue is to hold back on summoning too many 1-drops so that you can play around Spreading Plague. So the play here is to just equip the dagger, right? Not quite. Trunks plays out both of his 1-drops anyway. Does he just have the read that Melody isn't holding Spreading Plague? Not really. Trunks is just adapting his game plan to his unusual hand. Do you see the 2 Fungalmancers? Trunks realizes that by the time Spreading Plague comes down, he will have been able to deploy both, making 1/5 Scarab Beetles no match for his powered up board. So Trunks actually wants to play as many minions as possible to guarantee that buff targets survive. Trunks cleverly adapts to his double Fungalmancer draw and gets rewarded for committing with a turn 7 victory. It's incredible game sense like this that earned Trunks his spot in the Fall Championship. This has been our profile of Trunks for the HCT Fall Championship. Please join me in wishing him best of luck in the tournament. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, brought to you by the coaches at Gamer Sensei, please visit playhearthstone.com/esports for more of the Well Played series and all things Hearthstone esports.
Well played!
China currently 0-3 this tournament, and Trunks is the last line of defense to ensure that they don't have a round 1 sweep. Wouldn't be the end of the world for China, considering that they all can make it from the elimination matches that's happening on day 3. But that is an uphill battle to say the least. Let's go into game number 4 with Control Priest against Oddrogue. And Trunks, I think he's saving his best for last because he still has that Malagos Druid up. So if he can get over this hump, then Trunks is in a pretty dominant spot to finish the reverse sweep, which I'm going to call it right now, Kibler. I think Trunks can do it.
I agree. I do think that we've seen some cracks in the armor from Hatul here with this Control Priest. It has some tech choices, or Hatul just call them choices, that make it weaker against aggressive decks than typical builds. And he has a lineup that's very anti-aggro, and this may end up costing him in terms of those particular matchups.
Well, a better version of that analysis, Kibler, would be to talk about the good and bad tools of Gemini.
I see what you did there. I get that reference.
I salute people who also understand. So let's go into this first turn here from Trunks, and right off the bat, an interesting decision between Firefly and Arch and Squire. He immediately pulls it out, though. I kind of expected Trunks to think about it for half a second, but Firefly a little bit more versatile, just to have an extra 1-mana minion you can play.
And there is the Duskbreaker draw from Hatul. He does not have a dragon yet in his hand, and his version actually plays pretty much the typical number of dragons. He has an unusual mix. He has a Cobalt Scalebane thrown in along with only a single copy of Primordial Drake, where usually most decks tend to play 2 of 1.
Yep, that's right. And you can even just tell that Hatul just wants to take it slow, has the Duskbreaker, doesn't want to toss the Northside Cleric just to get eaten up by that Poison Dagger.
I think there may be some thought on Hatul's mind. Does he want to play out multiple minions here? Does he want to dagger up? He does have the Henchclan Thug, and daggering up and getting the Henchclan Thug online as a 4/4 is very powerful against the Duskbreaker. He did see Hatul keep, I believe it was 2 cards, maybe 3 cards, which means that there is the potential of the Gluttonous Ooze being among those. The Northshire Cleric is one that he did keep, but chose not to play, as it would have died to Dagger plus the Firefly.
Right.
So
now
Is someone injured?
do so.
yeah, it will be Cleric plus Powered Shield, so getting that on the board when it's no longer exposed to lethal immediately. Ooh, and that draw of Primordial Drake is very important because it enables his Duskbreaker the following turn.
Yeah, this is looking very good setup here from Hatul. Has removal at almost every stage of the mid game.
Specifically, this is very important because he is able to keep the Cleric on the board, even against the minions on the board, which gives him the 1 additional damage to kill the Henchclan Thug through that additional point of health. So I'd be curious to see if Trunks decides that he wants to attack into the Cleric here so he doesn't have to commit damage to it, on a future turn. Because if he does swing it face here, if there is, yeah, it looks like that might be exactly what he's doing. It also puts Hatul in a spot where he can't just attack and then heal to full against something. There's a heal and then attack. So here, this specifically does play around the Duskbreaker that Hatul has and prevents the Cleric from also, well, I guess it doesn't prevent it from surviving because he'd be attacking to the 4 attack minion as well. So that part didn't matter.
I get what you're saying. The idea is that he kind of makes it more difficult for Hatul to get value off the Northshire Cleric draw while answering his phone. So now that Trunks' early aggression has pretty much just been stifled, the first 3 turns are probably you can even argue turn 4 as well, since it sets up for those big pivotal 5-mana tempo plays with Fungalmancer. But the first 4 turns or so for Outrogue are so important, and you're behind already. So I wonder if Trunks maybe is going to start thinking about playing a little bit slower, or perhaps he's just going to try to hope that Priest continues to miss its really good minions on 4, 5, and 6.
I don't think you can take it slow. I think that you have to pressure here, and I like playing Argent Squire into Blood Knight. There's only a single copy of Shadowward Death that can actually deal with the 6/6 Blood Knight, or a second copy of Duskbreaker that would require an additional dragon to enable it as well. So it would essentially mean Hatul has to have not only the second Duskbreaker, but an additional card on top of that.
I like it. I think Blood Knight kind of works against you a lot of the times if you're trying to put a lot of pressure on the board, but you're like afraid of taking your own Divine Shields. But in this instance, you want to put as much pressure as possible. Give Control Priest the least amount of breathing room.
Yeah, and I like this from Trunks here. He decided, all right, well, I can just trade this Divine Shield from the Squire to make a big minion, because he needs to now get enough pressure on Hatul so that Hatul can't just survive to the Psychic Scream portion of the game. The Psychic Scream / Primordial Drake portion of the game starts to get really dangerous because you can't really stick anything to get minion damage in. And this is, again, pretty bad for Trunks because this means that he doesn't have a dagger to, it means that he can't kill the Duskbreaker with his dagger anymore, even if he re-daggers this turn because of the Powered Shield. And, just a little bit further out of range with that Gluttonous. He could play, say, Vicious Fledgling Dagger here, kill the Duskbreaker, so at least Hatul can't kill both his 6/6 and the Vicious Fledgling. But this is definitely getting to be a tough situation for Trunks, for sure.
Yeah, he's picking up all his 1-mana minions.
Yes.
I think he's pretty much just missing his other Dire and I think a Firefly, and that's it. He's doing all his 1-drops. Hatul, in the meantime, has the ability to answer either of these minions. Fledgling probably is more threatening, even though you do accept the 6 damage from the Blood Knight.
Yeah, here Hatul just needs to stay alive because he has double Psychic Scream plus Anduin in his hand. He just needs to try and slow down slow down Trunks and his ability to actually close out this game. If he does trade with the Fledgling, because that is sort of the X factor. If Fledgling gets going crazy, it can be difficult for you to kill with just about anything short of Psychic Scream. He could play either a Drake here, which would have only 6 health. So yeah, the Scalebane ends up being a choice that prevents a Fungalmancer from allowing him to trade over it, which was in fact the draw for Trunks.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's pretty much the big thing on Hatul's mind. How do I answer my opponent's really powerful play? It's a little bit worse to... Actually, no, it's a little bit better against things like Vile Spine Slayer, because they Vile Spine a 5/5 and you have Primordial Drake to rely on later in the game. So I actually think this is the right play here from Hatul in almost every angle.
All right, well, he's going to get 8 in here, so still hitting for big numbers. And still leaving a reasonable board available to him to keep the pressure on.
Yeah.
But again, those 2 Psychic Screams are looming in Hatul's hand, so if he is able to just keep picking apart Trunks' board and keeping himself afloat, it's going to be very difficult for Trunks to really get much damage potential once Scream into Drake comes down.
Trunks thinking about how much do I play to the top of my deck versus this immediate damage. And I think if I'm Trunks, I really want to maximize my weapon swings every single turn.
And Circle of Healing here for Hatul, not terribly potent. but he's still at 20. Vilespine Slayer is an attractive draw, but we're going into Psychic Scream mana. We're going to the point of the game where Hatul, can just clear off the entire board. And you may want to sort of take pause and decide whether, okay, I want to commit my Slayer and now have essentially my entire hand on the board. Kill your Drake here, or rather I guess it is a Drake, but not have a way to kill potential Twilight Drake afterwards, or rather Primordial Drake. I'm just getting my Drakes confused.
Drake the Rapper. All your dragons
he just has
equally.
Drake the Rapper. He's just playing God's Plan over there. I don't know.
I was trying to say that you spend so much time with dragons equally because you love them all that sometimes you mix them up.
And I like this from Trunks, just going in here, pushing the damage with the weapon. Maybe I could see committing one more minion here. I think you may need to play, say, the Vicious Fledgling in order to actually get Trunks to commit much more to this, which obviously is scary because you're left with a hand of 2 1-drops in the Slayer. But I think if you don't, I don't know that Hatul has to play a Psychic Scream next turn.
Perhaps he's just trying to threaten like a Leroy lethal of some capacity.
That Scale Worm, no matter what Trunks had played, is pretty powerful here because it allows him to clear off 2 of these minions and keep himself afloat pretty handily going into the potential Primordial Drake turn as well.
Yeah, I think in Trunks' mind, he's trying to perhaps like force Hatul in a position where it's like, okay, if you Psychic Scream, then I'm going to be able to deal a little bit more damage. Maybe I threaten with like a Leroy, Cold Blood, and like a Southsea deckhand. And just kind of put Hatul in a position where like you can choose to fight for this board, but if this Divine Shield minion sticks, it might give me that extra point of damage to finish the game.
All right, he managed to get him to pull the trigger on this, so that ends up working out actually quite well for Trunks. Commits minimal amount there, and now I think you just play the Vicious Fledgling and the Blood Knight, redagger. Just wants to just get an additional board of threats available to him and keep pushing.
And it works really well against Primordial Drake and Shadow Reaper Anduin. Just statted very nicely against both those possible answers on turn 8.
It is.
Tool needs his Arcanine Soul Priest, actually. Yeah.
He can Psychic Scream again now, and he did just pick up a Shadow Visions, but he has to be a little bit afraid here because he's down to 11. And Trunks has represented in the way that he's played. Potentially he has Leroy. Maybe he has Leroy plus Cold Blood. So Leroy plus Cold Blood, if you just Psychic Scream here, means you are dead. So I think that this is going to be a scary spot for Hatul potentially.
I'm trying to look at the spells potentially in Hatul's list. Wow, a Second Scream. So
right. Trunks needs a big draw here. That's a Vilespine Slave. That's a powerful card, but there's nothing on Hatul's side of the board. So what can he do? He knows that there's Scale Worms in Hatul's deck too. Right. So just playing out a tempo Vilespine Slayer can mean that it just gets eaten.
It gets eaten, and then your opponent's at 9. You have no single draw that can win the game outright, unless you get Myra's Unstable Element into Cold Bloods with Southsea Deckhand. That is the last chance here, but you have 24 cards remaining in your deck. That is extremely unlikely from this perspective if Trunks can't win the game next turn. And his window is going to start closing pretty soon.
It is, because Hatul is getting to have more and more mana, which makes cards like Shadow Visions that much more powerful, because they can go and dig and cast things quite readily in the same turn. This can find the single copy of Divine Him. There it is. Right. So now he gets to Scale Worm this minion down and pick up some extra cards and heal himself.
Right.
So up to 15, bonus card. The window is closing for Trunks here. He finds Flame Elemental, the Psychic Scream back into his deck.
That's exactly what he's afraid of.
A very weak draw, the worst possible card he could have found here. I mean, and now he's kind of committed to Vilespining this Scale Worm and killing the Cleric, and that means he's doing no damage. That means he has no Vilespines left to clear off a potential Primordial Drake. There is only one in Hatul's deck, but we see it's in his hand.
Doesn't even need it, to be honest. Can still hold on to the Primordial Drake if he wants to keep Dragon Activators for his Scale Worm.
I think Drake has to feel pretty good right now because it shuts out your opponent being able to use Fungalmancer in any profitable way. Because if you do just use the Scale Worm and kill the Vilespine, you end up potentially letting your opponent Fungalmancer you, but I guess you're still at 17 life, that's not that scary. Just take 6.
Trunks with a few more turns.
Oh, another fire. It's just March of the 1-drops. Trunks has drawn every single 1-drop in his deck and then drawn them again.
Just making him draw his 1-mana minions over and over. I mean, that is one of the downsides of playing these odd decks.
It's true.
You fill your deck with so many aggressive early game minions, but once in a while you draw this, and sometimes you also draw the Bakus and all 5-mana minions when you need your 1-drop.
And this is, you know, the dynamic between a deck like Odd Rogue and a deck like Control Priest. Once you get to a certain stage of the game, the Control Priest deck, it has cards like Shattering Brand, Primordial Drake. In the case of Hatul's deck, Free from Amber. Whereas Trunks, he still has just all these weak cards, and that Drake might well just seal the deal as Trunks is out of Vile Spine Slayers.
Yeah, he has about the last turn here for Myers and Stable to have a big impact, because right now, if Trunks draws Myers and Stable Portal, or Unstable Element, excuse me, next turn, he's just gonna die. Hatul will set up Shadowy Baranduin and just burn him to death.
Yeah, I think the window's closed for Trunks. I think it may have closed a couple turns ago even. And SI Agent is not it. It is in fact Trunks who is toast.
And you have to applaud Hatul for being able to be one of the few people to bring Warrior and Priest. The only person to bring Spell Hunter. Very unusual lineup, but it looks like, you know, his Gambit anticipating potential aggro decks is paying off.
Oh, it finds a Free from Amber.
Is this guy styling on him?
I think he is. There, oh, an Obsidian Statue to add insult to injury as Trunks finds Hench Clan Thug. Too little, too late.
I give up.
That is game. Hatul takes the series 3-1 as back-to-back strong performances from Europe able to advance to the winners match of Group C and D.
And frankly, as I said before we got into this, I love seeing unusual deck building decisions, and I love seeing them rewarded. Hatul, only player in the entire tournament with Warrior, and quite the odd Warrior deck at that. Rewarded with getting it banned and able to push the rest of his decks through against Trunks. He will move on to face Blood Trail in the winners match.
A little Casanova stare into the camera there from Hatul, as he will be playing Blood Trail for people who are fans of Trunks or China. Or perhaps just want to root for the underdog. China is now 0-4. All 4 players from the Chinese region are in the elimination matches. Cora is waiting with Hatul for a few words on his victory.
That's right. I'm joined by the man who is quickly becoming a fan favorite. It is Hatul, who has taken down Trunks to win his first match of the tournament. Congratulations. You came into this as, to be perfectly honest, a bit of an underdog. You qualified through the Challenger Series. We have never really seen you on a stage of this size in the past. How are you feeling coming into this series, especially against Trunks, who's a 3-time championship competitor?
I'm no worse than he is, so I'm actually pretty good in this game, so I'm not underdog.
I like the confidence, man. I mean, you show up in your blazer, you are just so brutally honest, and it seems like you are very confident in yourself and in your gameplay. Can you walk me through that lineup and your preparation for this tournament? Because you have brought some decks that are absolutely out of left field, something that we certainly have not expected to see.
Just a little hint, there are a lot of good players that you often present as underdogs, and you actually don't get it right usually. So as for the lineup, the first target was, I originally wanted to target aggro, but I knew that most of the people are not gonna bring it, basically. So I mid-ranged upped my lineup, I'd say that. So I took a deck that have a really good core cards against aggro and just adapted them to fit against the greedier matchups. So if this was my playoffs lineup, for example, that would be a 3-0. But since I had to adapt to the other 2 that I'm gonna face, I had to struggle a little more. That happens.
All right, be as flexible as possible. And I just want to say, I love rooting for an underdog, man. It's not always a bad thing to paint players in that light. We got to give the people at home a reason to care. And I think you certainly have given the fans at home a reason to care, but specifically the fans from Israel. You've done a ton of work in your community to build up Hearthstone and to build the Hearthstone community. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
No, I can't tell about that.
All right, that's fair enough. I also just have to take my word for it. Hatul is the winner of his first match. We're going to see you in the winners finals of your group a little later on.
One question for you. I really want to know what the casters think about this game.
About this game?
Yes.
Well, let me just say, we can ask them right now. Send it back over to the casters, see what they have to say about Hatul's question.
I don't know what to say, man.
He refused to answer the question. We can refuse to answer too, right? Is that the rules?
I think so. We have the right of refusal.
Was his question about this game as in Hearthstone? Hearthstone's great. That's what I think about Hearthstone.
Yeah,
it's
Brian
great.
Kibler says Hearthstone's great. In terms of the actual series, I mean, I kind of like the way Hatul played and navigate certain turns, because recognize certain threats. Sometimes, you know, you get a little greedy because you feel like, I can get away with stuff, but realize, you know what, I have Shadow Reaper Ando and a Promoter Drake. No need to be greedy. So I think, you know, given the fact that his preparation may seem a little bit odd, I think the way he piloted his series was perfectly fine.
I really also liked his explanation for how he arrived at his lineup. He was talking about how, you know, he had a lineup for playoffs that was meant to target aggressive decks, but he felt like, well, I don't want to just run into control decks, greedier decks, and not have a chance. So he mid-ranged them up, as he said. And I love that, A, breakdown of, you know, how he got there, and B, that sort of style of play and thought process.
That's right. And I love that Hatul says he's not the underdog. So stop writing him off. Stop saying that. I mean, my prediction simulation spreadsheet has him winning the whole thing.
It's true.
But I wasn't sure because, you know, I'm not entirely certain about the tech cards. But we'll see if it pays off in his winner's match as we wrap up match number 3. Coming up next, we have the final initial match with Tyler from Vietnam up against Tincho from Argentina. Don't go anywhere. More Hearthstone Championship Tour action continues right after this.